Hey friends! The other day I got a message from my friend who was like, hey, I know someone who wants to get into 3D modeling and do I have any resources or suggestions for that person? So I thought, I should really make a little video about this because I have so much to say and I've had so much fun learning 3D modeling over the last, 10 years or something. So I took some time to compile some resources and I wanted to point out some things I would suggest. And also just say that, to anyone just getting started in 3D, welcome to the journey, and it's so much fun. Personally, there's few things for me that will hold my attention for long spans of time. But 3D modeling was definitely one of those things, and so was game development. So if you need a constant challenge and you're always trying to improve your skill set and you're interested in either game dev or making art for games in 3D, then I'll definitely suggest some things that you may or may not have heard of before. Let me know if you have any suggestions on other softwares that you may use for 3D art or game dev. So let me show you what I got. Alright, so the first program that I would recommend is Blender. Right over here is where you can find the download for Blender, and it's super easy to get started, and there's a large supportive community for Blender artists. So even if you're just getting started, it's easy to find answers. At the bottom of the Blender site, you can find projects and community support, and I actually got ChatGPT to give me a little fresher upper on the history of Blender. Right here on the Blender site, you can learn about their development. Nowadays, it's more accessible than ever to get started in 3D art or game dev, and they're kind of interchangeable because once you have the skill set for Blender or your 3D modeling program of choice, then you'll have a lot more opportunities in other areas like animation. You could do cartoons, like animated films, or I chose game dev because I really like it where you can create a character, but then you can also make it interactive and create scenes and storylines. Personally, I like to integrate my Blender use with Unity, and Unity is my main program, and basically I'll use Blender anytime I need to edit a 3D model, or there's some things that I would prefer to do in Blender over right inside of Unity. But Unity is super diverse, but for 3D modeling and 3D art, I would definitely recommend Blender. Alright, back to my little list here. Once you get started in 3D modeling, then there's a lot of other cool resources that I found. When I first started 3D modeling and trying to learn, I started with 3D Max, which is a program from Autodesk, which has other softwares as well, like Maya is also an Autodesk program. In terms of industry standard, it used to be Autodesk, primarily Maya, 3ds Max, and then ZBrush and Substance Painter. But now a lot of the features those programs offer, such as Sculpting, are now integrated in Blender, which has really started to improve since... Okay, cool. So a quick history about Blender. I was just getting out of high school and starting to live my life, and I was focusing on other aspects in life, and in the early 2000s I should have been learning Blender when it first came out, but I didn't know. And also I didn't have a laptop until a little bit later. After I moved out of my parents' house when I was a kid, it was a while before I got a laptop, and so once I got a laptop, I used it nonstop. I started with 3ds Max, but then I switched over to Blender. When the modern era of Blender started over here in 2.8, there was a major update, and they had real-time previews in Eevee, which made it cooler to see the lighting and stuff. Well, Eevee kind of offered that. It's a different type of rendering system that they didn't have in Blender before. Another key feature in the bigger updates of Blender was the way the UI became more user-friendly, in my opinion, and also it kind of was a much nicer design, and it just keeps on getting better and has more and more features. And ever since I started in Blender, there's even more cool, awesome things. There's the grease pencil, which it's really easy to make a storyboard and then use the grease pencil like a pencil. You can turn that into actual hand-drawn animations. The way that the vector lines work when you're using grease pencil is a little bit different than the way you would use it in Photoshop or another drawing program or animation program. I've done a lot of research on how to do animation and 3D art, both 2D and 3D, so this is one of my favorite special interests is how to animate and how to do game development and which are the coolest softwares. So I got super excited about this question, how to get started in 3D modeling, and I was like, oh, cool. I have a thing or two to say about that. The fact that it used to be the industry standard to use Autodesk, that was especially before there were as many free resources. Like Unreal wasn't always free, for example. So like in the last 10 years, a lot has changed, and it's been a lot easier to start getting trained on your own time and get ready to be a part of the game industry, whether it's as a hobby or even recently I heard some professionals say that now is not the best time to get into the game development industry, and how there's just tons of tech layoffs. And
what is some advice that I could give to a 16, 17, 18-year-old who is interested in making a career out of computers?
Well, pick a different career.
Through
all of my history, there hasn't been enough engineers to go around. But right now, it's kind of brutal out there in the engineering world. Game companies are laying off. Business companies are laying off.
In order to get a game on Steam or to create a successful game, it really does take a lot. If you have an interest in 3D modeling, then that's a really good start to get into the routine of making 3D art and how to use that type of software. And basically, if you get good at Blender, then that could apply to a lot of different areas in life. And I've heard of people that will start with like a 3D animation as a music video for their band, and then they'll go on to make a game out of it. This one game I'm thinking of, this one called Sleepy Man, and this guy's a TikToker, and then he was showing his game at PAX West this year. So I was like, oh, that's a cool story, because he had a band and he made a 3D animation, and the animation was so cool that he decided to make a game out of it, and then he was showcasing his game. So you can really take your 3D art places. Back to that industry standard concept, even though I've never worked in AAA, I have worked in 3D art and game dev for about 12 years now in total. But that's ever since I like just started and learning Flash, and Flash doesn't really have anything to do with 3D art, except for after Flash there was Unity, and I was like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever. Because the next coolest thing for me besides 3D art was to make it interactive, and so it's really fun. So yeah, even though I haven't worked in AAA, like I have noticed a lot of game developers on YouTube and whatnot, and try to learn as much as I can from other people's experiences. And I've watched a lot of devlogs where people describe what it's like to work in AAAs, so I have an idea. But yeah, so all I know is that before you kind of had to know Maya or 3ds Max, but nowadays even if you know Blender, that's really good, and for many different reasons. Okay, for example, if you want to get into sculpting, normally they would have said, oh, you gotta use ZBrush for that, but now there's sculpting tools in Blender that are like really good. Probably not as good as ZBrush, which ZBrush also has like textures, and I think like you can make pores on the skin and stuff like that. I tried ZBrush a little bit, but from what I understand, you kind of really need to have a drawing pad. I have an XP pen now where you use a pen on the screen, but before I didn't. And so my friend, who's really good at sculpting on his computer and in real life with actual sculpting, he said that like don't even bother trying it if you're just using a freaking trackpad on a laptop, or if you're using a mouse and a keyboard. He's like, wait until you have like an XP pen or some other drawing pad that you can actually do like the sculpting and the 3D a lot more easily with your shortcuts with the hotkeys and stuff. So if you want to sculpt in 3D, then you might consider ZBrush, but you can do similar things in Blender as well. Especially if you're just getting started and you're not sure how much you like it, you might as well start off with the free softwares first, unless, you know, you have an endless bank account, then by all means. The industry is standard, like 3ds Max, it's definitely not free. Just about anybody can open up Blender or Unity or Unreal for free at this point. You just need to have a computer that can run and a GPU that can handle it, because it does kind of like run heavy on the computer, and especially if you have like more than one thing open at a time, like if you have Photoshop and Unreal, you want to make sure that your computer can handle it. There's like a couple other things I wanted to tell you about. I have so many Discords that it's really hard to find what I'm looking for when I need it. Good God. Alright, I am in a lot of these. I think I've narrowed it down. There it is. Alright, I recognize the icon. In terms of resources for how to get started learning, besides the blender.org, there's also a model a day challenge, which is really fun, and they have these different themes and they do it ongoingly. So anyone is welcome to join a model a day, and One of my friends is the moderator to this group, and when I first started learning Blender, I was streaming live on Twitch. Shout out to my friend. My friend is a really good 3D artist, and he helped me learn while I was learning live on Twitch. And I would be struggling while learning Blender, and they would just be in the chat like, oh, this is how you do this and that. But now we have ChatGPT. That was a few years ago, but now I would have ChatGPT. Back then, human interaction and actually like human intervention, it really helped me learn faster. So, but yeah, community support is really helpful, and I would recommend this Discord if you're trying to learn. Okay, besides that, I actually have my personal notes here, including code. I guess I can leave a link to these notes, but everything on the face of the earth that could have ever been of interest to me that I want to remember. Usually I'll wait for people to ask me for the link, but I have this notes list and it's just got like all these resources. I guess it's like one of the things I like to do is like compile resources. Another good thing that ChatGPT would be good for. But yeah, I've got code on here. Since they're kind of interchangeable, I wanted to tell you about the live coders, which are these guys right here. One of the cool things about streaming while I was learning how to code was that I got to become a part of the live coders. And they're this really awesome group of people, and they stream live on Twitch and YouTube often as well. So if you come over here and check out their website, then you can learn more. Something that I like about this group is that a lot of these people are educators. So I think part of the agreement to be on the team is that you'll be friendly and like answer questions kind of thing. Each channel has their own unique kind of setup or whatnot, but you can see that I'm under the team members over here. Basically, each one of these profiles links to a channel that will describe like what they specialize in. Here's my friend Graham Weldon that I met through Twitch, and here's me down here. I definitely recommend a lot of these people on here, and I've stopped by a lot of their streams and I follow a lot of them. Some of them live in the Seattle area, like this guy right here, Pirate Software. But yeah, so it's really cool to be a part of something that's greater than the sum of my parts. And this is something that came about because I was learning 3D modeling and game dev. There's this other group called Game Dev Network, which I totally recommend because they have lots of resources for different specific softwares and industry talk. So if you're trying to get into game dev, like they also have job listings and you can mingle with people that already are working in the industry kind of thing. So also this is a really big server. This one has over 50,000 people. So definitely fun social thing to do. Luckily I live near Seattle where there's a lot of game developers, but that was intentional and it took years to move over here to this area. So I'm really glad to have the luxury of being able to meet up with people in person. But whether or not you live in the city where they have meetups for fellow game developers, I would recommend the Game Developer Network. Check out some of the resources that they have over here. I'm in a lot of other game dev servers, but those two stand out the most to me in terms of like what I would recommend for getting started and or learning. There's also the subreddit for Blender where you can just learn about new features and how people are implementing those new things. And if you don't know like how or what you want to do at first, then it might give you some ideas. I'll go to Instagram and I'll go to the Explore tab, and because I follow a lot of like 3D related hashtags like Blender, hashtag B3D, hashtag like 3D art, stuff like that. There's like satisfying animation hashtag, stuff like that. So if you follow certain hashtags on Instagram, then you'll get really good suggestions on the Explore page. Or if you really don't like what you see on your social media feed, then I would recommend following a few things that you're interested in. I'm definitely one of those people who prefers the algorithm to study my likes and like feed me more of what I like. I don't care if it makes me spend money. I'm over here looking at the subreddit for Blender, and you can see people have different examples of what they're working on. There's that. Something I've done is compile videos over the years on YouTube. If I know I'm going to learn game dev or Unity or Blender, like I basically have a playlist for every topic that I'm super interested in. I'll just save every video that I watched and or that was good. Pretty sure I watched every single video in this playlist. There's 180 videos. This just goes to show how much you can learn just through watching YouTube videos. I saved the playlist, so if you want to check out some of these really good ideas, like how to make fractals in Blender, how to rig a 3D model, how to do a face, like how to model a face, stuff like how to make hair, how to animate stuff. Basically anything and everything that I wanted to learn along my journey I saved in this playlist. So I hope that that helps. Every once in a while, someone will just pick up a software, and I remember my friend when they were just getting into Blender and Unity, and now they totally have like this really cute 3D modeled bunny that's a character for their new game that they're making in Unity. So shout out to my friend who's making this game Mechabees. Here's their TikTok, and give them a follow because I'm one of their first followers. What the hell, I'm not following. Follow my friend Mechabees who's working on their first, it's like their second mobile app since I met them, but their first one where they 3D modeled the character, and I thought that was really cool. Alright, next, I wanted to tell you about this one. Something I wanted to admit is that when I first started 3D modeling in 3ds Max, the first thing I modeled or attempted to model was a realistic human female. That was like way harder than I thought it would be. I thought, oh, this is great, I'm good at like figure drawing class, you know, I'd probably be good at 3D modeling. But it was a totally different kind of muscle memory to use like my mouse and keyboard at the time. And I was like box modeling, so it was basically turning a box into a 3D like realistic character, and that was before I did any type of sculpting, so it was like really weird. It was totally not like drawing whatsoever. That was really funny. Looking back, I have to like take some of those down like off of my Facebook profile from back in the day because I'm just like, this is so embarrassing. I would like to do more hand sculpting of models actually, but what I've really gotten into lately is using Reillusion and Character Creator 4, which is really fun. Over the last few years, we invested in some software like Character Creator 4 and iClone. This way I could customize a super realistic looking character inside Character Creator. Character Creator is its own standalone software that you can download and use through the Reillusion Hub. And if you get the Reillusion Hub installed, it's kind of like the Unity Hub or comparable to the Epic Games installer where you would have like Unreal installed. Anyway, it's like a hub, and you can install the different Reillusion softwares including Character Creator 4 or iClone 8, which are the two that I use mostly. And then there's other add-ons. One of my favorite add-ons is Headshot 2. And I started off when they first had Headshot 1. It's like you take one picture and it'll like slap it on a realistic model and bam, you totally have a model that looks like you or your friend or whatever. Character Creator 4 is the best realistic 3D character creator that I know of that I've tried. You can use Character Creator inside of Unreal, Unity, Blender, or iClone. It can transfer from your realistic self-designed character where you can get all kinds of like customized clothing from the store, or you can make them yourself in Blender, and then you can put it in your game and it'll already have like the rig and the facial animations and really complicated stuff. Modeling a character from scratch, rigging it, and then all that stuff like facial animation in Blender was like a whole journey, and it was like really fun. It was like self-exploration. But in the end, the Character Creator 4 is really fun if you just want to have a really nice looking character in Unity, and it'll have its own rigging system that will work. Yeah, Character Creator 4 is not free, but I do recommend it. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. It's a really fun and exciting hobby that can actually help your mind think in terms of technical art and artistic engineering when it comes to softwares that are kind of complicated. Especially for people that don't have too much computer experience but want to get more into the technical side. The path that I took started off with drawing programs like Photoshop, and then I got into the 3D art side of things. So say you know some drawing softwares, but you want to get more into 3D modeling, then Blender would be a really good first step. And then say you want to get into game dev from there, then Unity is really either next step. Learning Blender and Unity at the same time could actually be beneficial because I don't want to say that they're really similar, but they're like in the same vein. I was kind of learning them back to back, and so since you can use your Blender art in Unity, then it's really helpful that way. But Unity is more so you can just buy assets on the asset store, and there's a lot of free assets as well. Get pre-made 3D models already ready and working in Unity faster if you're not modeling everything from scratch in Blender. I sound like a lazy ass, but really as you go along in your journey, then you'll kind of learn what do you like and what don't you like. Some things you might think that you're gonna like, and then it turns out, oh, that actually bores me to death, I can't do that. But whereas other people might get hooked on a certain aspect, like the 3D modeling side of things, and really go all the way. In any case, if you do get into the 3D art side more than say, the game development side, there's different applications for that, such as selling your 3D models. One thing you could do is sell your assets on the asset store, and that's one way to make money through 3D art. A lot of these asset packs include code or functionality, but some of them are just art assets. You would have to know a little bit of Unity in order to get your assets in the asset store, because you would have to bring your assets into Unity, create an asset pack, and then submit it to the asset store, and then they'll either approve it or more likely it'll get denied, and they'll give you reasons why, and then you would have to resubmit it later. If it turns out you like to code, then selling your code in the asset store is a good option for you as well. The Blender market. You can make a profile for Blender Market and sell your assets here. Granted, I mean, there's probably a bar. I'm not sure what the qualifications are to sell your stuff here, but you can totally make assets and sell them here on the Blender Market. There's also TurboSquid, and I think I did actually put a model up on here one time. So yeah, if you go through the motions and you create a 3D model, or better yet, a package. If you do a package, then, you know, just make sure it's really good, you know, like make sure it's cohesive and that it's something that people could use. And being able to sell 3D models as a game dev asset is another good reason to learn the ropes in game development as well a little bit. So even if you don't want to be in the game dev part of things as much, it's still good to learn. You can also sell like custom services on Fiverr if you get into 3D art. You could do overlays and make really cool custom 3D art and overlays for YouTubers and Twitch streamers, and sell packs for like overlays. I did that for a while on Fiverr, where you make like Twitch panels and a banner and a profile picture, and you make them all kind of like match. There's a whole section on Fiverr for streamers. So it's a really good market because a lot of people want to be a streamer, and maybe it's, you know, more attainable to become a streamer. And if you have the extra funds to be a streamer, you probably can also afford to pay an artist. So you can make money on Fiverr for Twitch, stuff like that. You could come up with like a tutorial on how to do something and sell it on Gumroad. And the cool thing about Gumroad is it could be free. So some people with the, wait, hold on. XUS dot, I think it's like this. I put a few things up on Gumroad, but here's another example of how you could create custom art and sell it as a pack here on Gumroad. Some people will do like Twitch streams, and it'll be like a short tutorial on how to make something, and that's kind of what I was trying to do, but my stuff isn't really spectacular. It was like how to make 3D buttons in Blender, and that was like several years ago. There's probably far more efficient ways to make banners and panels and buttons and animations these days than how I was doing it back then, but it was really fun, a fun journey, and you can sell stuff on here. Like most of these I put as $0 because I was just trying to get more followers. So you can make a profile on Gumroad and give away free assets and link to your YouTube video where it describes like, hey, I made a custom pack, here's how I did it, here's a free download of a template or something like that. And that could either draw more followers to your channel or give you more customers. I think that when it comes to 3D art, it can be kind of like a solitary thing, or it can be more social, and it just depends on what your personality is like. So if you prefer to have people around, there's definitely resources for co-working, and basically like in Discord there's some groups where people will just like hang out and like a screen share, and they'll do their 3D modeling or their drawing, and it's really fun. So but yeah, I totally recommend trying to find a community and working with others whenever it's possible. Thank you for asking this awesome question. Let me know if you have any other questions about 3D art or game dev or anything else I'm interested in, like AI research or animation, stuff like that. That's all for now, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Yeah, I hope you liked the video, and let me know if you have any questions or suggestions for next time. Bye!